Alright guys, before we get into the podcast, let's get through the rigmarole first. Remember guys, this podcast posts each and every single Sunday. We bring you all the Dolphins news you need to know about. This first news story could potentially change the face of the franchise for the Dolphins for 10 plus years, and for years to come. This move would be very crucial if this rumor is true. Remember, this is a rumor. This is not 100% guaranteed. This could be a smokescreen. This comes from the Fin Fanatic. Trade up talk with the Indianapolis Colts. Very interesting stuff. The latest Miami Dolphins rumor has the team talking with the Indianapolis Colts about a potential move to the 6th spot. According to a new Miami Dolphins rumor, which we all know at this time of the year is likely garbage, the Miami Dolphins are one of two teams that are currently talking with the Indianapolis Colts about a move to the 6th spot of the draft. Those that follow at Incinerated Bob know that from time to time his sources can be accurate. That is not to say they're all 100% this time around, or that the Dolphins and Colts are merely talking possible compensation. There was a rumor floating around last week that hinted at potential talks between the two clubs, and one report had the Dolphins possibly moving up to the 6th spot, but not losing their pick at 11, which would be crazy if that was true. I'm going to repeat that one more time for myself and for the viewers. Last week, that hinted a potential talk between the two clubs, and one report had the Dolphins possibly moving up to the 6th spot, but not losing their pick at 11. That would be virtually impossible to happen. I think this isn't even a rumor. It's reported that the Colts want to trade back. They have their franchise quarterback. They just want to get blue chip players. They want to get as many draft picks as they can to help fix their roster, which is just one of the, probably if not the worst roster in football. They need a lot of players to help Andrew Luck come back off that shoulder injury. So for us to give up, I don't know what we would give up, and if we got the 11th and 6th overall pick in the draft, which I would assume, and not to jump off topic here, but it is very interesting that little nugget, so I don't forget later on. It makes a lot of sense because the Dolphins have made it clear they want to draft a lot of starters in this draft. So, like they always have, they always go with the best player available, whoever they consider that to be. So it would make sense for the Dolphins to keep that 11th overall pick and take a shot at a quarterback with the 6th overall pick. I would assume that would involve future compensation in terms of we might not have a first rounder next season, or a second rounder this season. So that would be very interesting if the Dolphins were somehow able to pull that off. But that is virtually impossible for the Dolphins to somehow pull that off. It was summarily dismissed, considering that the trade would have to start with the Dolphins' 11th overall pick, or would it? How the Dolphins would move up to 6 is anyone's guess, but we can bank on it's likely costing a swap of ones, a second-round pick, and probably a 4th as well. In other words, it would be costly. The other issues, of course, it would do to the Dolphins, is who do the Dolphins believe will be there at 6. Miami obviously can't move up prior to the draft. They have to make sure that the player that they want will still be on the board, presumably a quarterback. When the Colts are on the clock, either a trade partner has already been agreed to and the deal gets done quickly, or another team jumps into the mix and the price goes up. One thing seems to be certain here: the Colts are obviously interested in moving out of the 6th spot and adding more draft picks. The Dolphins' interest in moving up, well, I suppose we'll find out what they are offering if a trade is to be made, or after the draft when the rumors fly of what is being offered and asked for. So for now, take it with a grain of salt. And for those wondering about the featured image, okay, he makes a joke about a dog. We don't need to know about that. This is an update to this rumor. Sources say the Colts are taking calls on the number 6 overall pick, with multiple teams interested in moving up. So far, Dolphins and Bears are showing the most interest. Bills and Patriots could jump in if targeted player are on the board. That's very interesting for a lot of different reasons. As the article indicated, presumably it would be for a quarterback. Who knows? It might not be for a quarterback. It could be for Saquon. It could be for Bradley Chubb if he somehow fell to the 6th overall pick. Either one of those picks, obviously, would greatly help the Dolphins out because those are two Pro Bowl borderline. I mean, those are two great players. Those are two great players. Obviously, Bradley Chubb would help us with our pass rush woes that we had last season. Obviously, we ranked 26. That was mostly due to injuries. And for a lot of different reasons. We never really played with the lead on a consistent basis. But, who knows who it's for? I mean, I would assume if Baker Mayfield somehow fell to 6, he got past the Broncos or Broncos, Jets, and I can't remember who's fourth. I can't remember who's fourth. But nevertheless, I would say it was probably for a quarterback. But again, you never know. The Dolphins, I mean, we've traded up high in the draft before. Not that it was the same regime or anything, but we went up and got Deion Jordan. So you never really know. But it's very interesting stuff. I know this. I think all of our hearts would explode if that did happen on draft day. If we heard the jingle, and then we saw the graphic of the aqua and orange pop up, and we said trade alert. I think we would all lose our minds. But it would definitely. I mean, say we did take Baker Mayfield with the first overall pick. That would be ridiculous. I mean, I think the entire fan base would be pumped for that. The entire city of Miami would just be super excited. If we got Saquon, same results, or Bradley Chubb, same results. So, very interesting stuff. Right now, the Dolphins sit at a perfect spot in the draft. Because of the run on quarterbacks early on in the draft, the Dolphins could sit at 11 and still get a top 5 talent in this draft. Not all these quarterbacks are 5 of the best players in this draft. When you talk about Minkah Fitzpatrick, Roquan Smith, Tremaine Edmonds, Derwin James, it's insane the amount of talent that is in this draft. Because of the quarterbacks, all of those guys are going to fall, and it's like we're going to have a top 8 pick in this draft. It really is. So without having to move or anything, and we could get a blue chip player if we don't do anything and just stay 1,000% still. So the Dolphins have a lot of options that they could either way they go, unless we pick Vita Vea from Washington, which I will literally lose. I would hate that pick, but other than that, the Dolphins either road they go down seems to be a very good road. So very interesting stuff there. This next news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Dolphins like 3 defenders at the number 11 overall pick. The Dolphins have their sights set on a defensive player with the 11th overall pick, as Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald reports. The club is hoping to select Georgia linebacker Roquan Smith, Virginia Tech linebacker Tremaine Edmonds, or Washington defensive tackle Vita Vea in the first round. Defensive backs Derwin James, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and Denzel Ward could also be in consideration, per Jackson. While the Dolphins also like South Dakota State tight end Dallas Goedert, according to Armando Salguero of the Miami Herald, although Miami almost surely won't use a top 15 pick on a tight end, the Dolphins would prefer to select a quarterback at number 11, but don't expect any of the top 4 quarterback prospects to be available. So again, that is a very interesting report. I'm going to go back to this side of the report. The Dolphins have their sights set on a defensive player with the 11th overall pick. The club is hoping to select Georgia linebacker Roquan Smith, Tremaine Edmonds, Vita Vea, Derwin James, Minkah Fitzpatrick, or Denzel Ward. So that's very interesting. So I'm assuming we can. First of all, I swear to God, if Vita Vea, I really listen. He's a good player. He's a nose tackle. I don't think everybody's like, oh, he could develop into I think his ceiling is Haloti Ngata. I think that's his best that he is ever going to be in the NFL, and that's a Hall of Fame caliber player. If Haloti Ngata could stay healthy, he would have he would have had a gold jacket on. He would eventually have a gold jacket on. So I'm not saying Vita Vea is going to be this terrible. I just don't think I just do not think the Dolphins need to take a nose tackle with a top 10 pick. Basically, because like I said, with the run on the quarterbacks, we're going to get a top 10 talented player. I just don't think that's the best road to go down. Other than that, like I just previously said, either pick. If the Dolphins, out of all of these guys, Roquan Smith, and I'm taking Vita Vea out of this, Roquan Smith, Tremaine Edmonds, Derwin James, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Denzel Ward, the one I don't like out of all of those guys, and it's not to say he's not going to be a good player, is Tremaine Edmonds. The only reason I don't like him, he's 19 years old, and I think Roquan's ready. Like, I think he's a plug-and-play guy. I don't think Tremaine Edmonds is going to be his best in his first season. Not to say Roquan Smith will be that, but I think he will be an impact player his first season. Tremaine Edmonds, just more unlikely that he would be that player. Same thing with Minkah Fitzpatrick, Derwin James, and Denzel Ward. I think all three of those guys are ready to step in and be playmakers, legitimate playmakers. I think out of everybody on that list, the best player on that list, I think it would be you could have a heavy heated argument between the two, but Derwin James and Roquan Smith. I think if it wasn't for all these quarterbacks in this draft, Roquan and Derwin James would be top 5 players. I think Derwin is a better prospect than Jamal Adams was coming out of college. I don't even think it's close, and he was a top 7 pick last season to the Jets. I think he's way more. I think he just has more upside than Jamal did, and I think he's just. I mean, you hear everybody gush about how great of a leader he is. He's Cam Chancellor 2.0. Jimbo Fisher, his college head coach, compared him to Sean Taylor. He said the first time he ever saw him in a practice environment, he said he reminded him of Sean Taylor. I think Derwin James is the second, in my opinion, he is the second best player in this draft, only to Saquon Barkley. I think Bradley Chubb's a third, and that's how much I like Derwin, and that's just me. But I really love Derwin James. I think he's one of the best players in this draft. And like I said, I think you can make an argument for Roquan Smith. He's definitely a top 5 prospect in this draft. So, again, whatever the Dolphins decide to do, out of all of those guys, those are all great players. But I think Roquan and Derwin are just on another level in terms of impact right away. I think either one of those guys, and Minkah Fitzpatrick, not to leave him out, will make huge plays their first season. And this isn't a Charles Harris situation where he's a developmental player where we're going to have to wait a year to see what he can truly do. Those guys are going to come out onto the scene and be a Marshawn Lattimore type of an impact on this football team. Those players are going to have immediate impact on this team. Both of those guys, Roquan and Derwin, are going to... It's going to be a race to see who's going to be defensive rookie of the year, and those guys are going to be cornerstones of this franchise and that defense for many years to come. Very, very, if at all, any bust potential between Roquan, Derwin, and Minkah. I think Tremaine Edmonds probably has a little bit of bust potential just because he's young and he hasn't had a lot of experience. So I would just say... I would say between Derwin and Roquan, very, very little, and Minkah, very, very little bust potential. And Vita Vea, but I just don't think his impact is greater than a free safety who I think could be one of the best in the league for many years to come, and obviously Roquan Smith, who I think is going to be a tremendous linebacker on the next level. Next news story: Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins to host. I think most of you guys probably heard this by now, but I don't know if we went through this the last podcast, but it's interesting news nonetheless. Dolphins to host Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield. Wyoming quarterback Josh Allen will have a top 30 visit with the Dolphins on Thursday. And Friday, Albert Beer of the Monday Morning Quarterback tweets the Dolphins will also meet with Oklahoma single caller Baker Mayfield on Thursday. The Broncos, who hold the 5th pick in the draft, recently became the latest team to meet with Allen. Opinions are split on the 6'5", 230-pounder, but he's almost universally regarded as one of the 4 best quarterbacks in this year's draft. Mayfield, also a member of this year's Big Four, along with Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen, has also proven to be a divisive prospect. The Oklahoma product has been knocked for potential... this is Baker Mayfield. That was very confusing. Potential character issues and his lack of size, but his on-the-field performance has been strong as a whole. Currently slated at pick 11, the Dolphins and head coach Adam Gase have been heavily linked to this year's quarterback prospects. Miami, of course, deployed Jay Cutler as their single caller in 2017. After Ryan Tannehill went down with a knee injury, Tannehill should be available for the upcoming campaign, but the Dolphins still seem interested in adding a potential upgrade. Alright, so I want to break this down for you guys and just give you my overall opinions on some of these players. Josh Allen, I think out of every quarterback in this draft, has the biggest bust potential written all over him. Obviously, a 56% completion percentage, not a good sign for an NFL quarterback. Everybody makes excuses for him. He didn't play with great talent, and all this other stuff. What I find interesting is what other people say that know way more about football than I do in terms of former NFL quarterbacks. One thing that they all say, and you can watch interviews with them all, one thing that they say you cannot teach is accuracy, which I think is very interesting. It's a very hard skill to master. If you don't show it early on, and if you don't show it at all in your college career, it's likely you'll never have it at all. And you're really just getting the player you see in terms of how he throws and how he has success with throwing. And some people argue that he's never going to have anticipation, nor is he ever going to have accuracy. And I think Jordan Palmer, who's his quarterback coach, really said it in an interesting way. When comparing him to Cam Newton, he said, which I disagree with this. I think Cam Newton eventually learned how to throw with anticipation, the best he could possibly do it. But he said Cam Newton looks and waits to see somebody get open, then throws it, as opposed to throwing people open or seeing it before it's actually there and then making the throw and completing it. And that's obviously why you see Brady, Drew, and Peyton, how they were able to get the ball out of their hands so quickly is because they would anticipate throws, and that's why it was so hard, to even get after any of those guys, really, is because they just diagnose things so quick. And I think Josh Allen, the fact that those are red flags with him, the fact that he never proved that in college, I think he has the biggest bust potential. And to waste a top 10 pick on him with all the other prospects in this draft, I think is foolish. That's just my opinion. That's just how I look at him. That's not to say that he has probably the biggest ceiling. I think Lamar Jackson has the biggest ceiling in the NFL, because I think he has shown that he can be a half-decent passer. And I think he's a better passer than Josh Allen. Even though they played in totally different offenses, Lamar Jackson had obviously better talent surrounding him. Yada, yada, yada. But Josh Allen obviously has a bunch of talent. Obviously very, heavily decorated scout said it's the best arm they've ever seen. And he obviously has a lot of talent. But his tape is completely different. Obviously his production is way lesser. It's just lesser than everybody else in this draft. His production is less than Luke Falk, Mason Rudolph, Lamar Jackson. And when you look at production and tape, I think he falls behind all of those guys, which is just to me, is a big red flag. I think he's a combine guy. I think he's just a lot of hype and not a lot of substance. That's just my opinion. I like him. I think if he has potential to be, but there's always a stinker in every NFL draft in terms of quarterbacks, and I think he's probably the most likely one to be that. Now, when you talk about Baker Mayfield, I think, out of everybody in the draft, I think he fits the Dolphins the most in terms of what they need and what they look for at the position, and obviously fit with our coach, Adam Gase. They're very similar in personalities. And I've talked about Baker a lot. I love his leadership. I love his swagger that he plays with on the football field. He's just really fun to watch. I think he makes quick decisions. He's a playmaker. He's got great football instincts. And those are the things that I love about him the most. Obviously, he has a pretty big arm for his size. I think people compare him to Drew Brees a lot, but I think it's not even close. I think physically, he's way more gifted than Drew ever was, and he's just as mentally strong in terms of he does make plays in the pocket, just like Drew did at Purdue. It's not like he's not Johnny Manziel, who just relies on instincts and athleticism. He is a very good pocket passer. The thing that I don't like about Baker, obviously, his size is, I think, a little bit overblown. It's a concern, but it's not like the end all be all, especially in today's NFL. I think if Doug Flutie was in today's league, it would be completely different because of how wide open everything is. It's more like the CFL than it's ever been in terms of how pass heavy it is. It's way less. It's not a physical slobber knocker game anymore. It is a lot more open, and it's a lot more finesse. It's a lot more passing. Obviously, it's way less physical. So I think that's a little bit overblown. But when you look at the thing that is a huge red flag for me is in his college career, he played with a lot of great players, like a lot of them, a great deal of great players. Just this past season, he played with Mark Andrews. He played with Hollywood Brown. He played with Orlando Brown, if I didn't already mention him, who played left tackle or right tackle. He played with a great backfield. His entire career that he played with a great backfield. Obviously Joe Mixon, Samaje Perry, who are both NFL players. Those are all uber talented players. When you look at the tape and you watch him play, he's throwing it to a lot of wide open players because of the system that they have down there at Oklahoma. That's the biggest red flag for me. Was it him or was it the talent around him? Was it the system? That's the only thing that when I look at Baker Mayfield is just the biggest question mark for me. Can you do it on the next level? Can you be that same player? Can you be as accurate? Because everybody's like, oh, he's the most accurate quarterback, and one of the most accurate quarterbacks in college football history. Statistically, that's true. But when you look at the tape, he's throwing, like I just said, he's throwing to people that are I mean, my God, these people are just wide open in some of these throws. Not to say he's never made a tough throw in his life. I'm just saying a lot of his throws, there's nobody around some of these players. And that's the only red flag I have for Baker. Other than that, I think he has potential to be a franchise quarterback. Obviously, people say his maturity is an issue. And that does come with being a franchise quarterback. You have to be obviously mature and ready to I think his leadership, his style of being a franchise quarterback is different than Phillip Rivers and Andrew Luck, and where those guys are like, oh, prim and proper, and this is how, just very mature, not very controversial in how they carry themselves. I think Baker Mayfield does it in a different way, and I think it can succeed on the next level, and I think he does. I think the players that he will play with on the next level will want to run through a brick wall for him. So I think all of those things are positives, but like I said, the only red flag I have, not because it's not his size, it's not his arm talent, it's none of the things, none of those things. I think it's just the system that he played in, and can he replicate that kind of accuracy on the next level, where the windows are just going to be way smaller in the NFL. And I think him and Adam are going to be great. If that happens, I think are going to be great. And I would love the pick, don't get me wrong. And our preseason games are going to be, those are going to be some must watches. This next news story: Dolphins trying to meet with Rashad Penny. Although the Dolphins have already signed veteran Frank Gore to pair with, this comes from Pro Football Rumors, with Kenyan Drake, the club is open to selecting another running back at the draft, as Barry Jackson, the Miami Herald, writes. Indeed, Miami has been attempting to schedule a pre-draft visit with San Diego State running back Rashad Penny, but finding an open date has been difficult, given that Penny has already set up meetings with other teams. Penny, 5'11", 220 pounds, rushed for a whopping 2,000 yards in 2018, averaging 7.8 yards per carry, while scoring 23 touchdowns on the ground. One thing I will say about Rashad Penny, I think obviously this is a very deep running back class, but I think I like Mark Walton more than Rashad Penny. I think he's the kid out of obviously the U. I'm sure everybody who's listening to this is familiar with him. I think he's just a little bit more talented, in my opinion. I just like him more as a prospect. This next news story: Dolphins, and obviously Sony Michel. Those guys are higher draft picks. Not Mark Walton, but Sony Michel and like Nick Chubb. Next news story: Dolphins meet with Kenny Vaccaro. Kenny Vaccaro will visit with the Dolphins on Thursday. Ian Rappaport of NFL.com tweets, "This marks Vaccaro's first known visit of the offseason," which is weird. With the ability to play both safety and slot cornerback, we had Vaccaro ranked as one of the best safeties in this year's free agent crop. Unfortunately, the market has sagged for the entire position group. Many of this year's top safeties had to settle for inexpensive deals, and some remain unemployed, including Vaccaro, Trey Boston, and Eric Reed. Evaluations of Vaccaro's ability may differ. A first-round pick in 2013, Vaccaro has turned into three exemplary seasons in two lousy years. In 2017, Pro Football Focus rated Vaccaro as the single worst safety in the league among 87 qualifiers. But given his draft pedigree and his ability to play man in the slot, Vaccaro was still expected to land a quality deal. The Dolphins project to start TJ McDonald and Rashad Jones, so Vaccaro would be looking at a bench role in Miami. I don't know. Vaccaro would add great depth for us. He would add great depth, versatility, and stuff of that nature. I wouldn't be as opposed to it. I don't think he is a starter per se, but he's definitely a great backup and a great special teams player. So that's definitely something to keep your eye on, for sure. Let's see here. Next news story: Danny Amendola says Patriots offer didn't come close to Dolphins offer. Now, this might not be the right quote that I wanted to read, so we'll just bear with me here. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Patriots the offer didn't come close to the 2-year, $12 million, $8 million guaranteed deal he took with the Dolphins. He said, quote, "I came in it with an open mind. I understood Bill runs a tight ship and hasn't been known to pay his players. I understood that I gave money back to him so I could play for him and play for my teammates and fulfill my side of the contract. And at the end of the day, I had faith that he was going to give me an opportunity to stay. When free agency broke, I came to the realization that he wasn't going to really come close to any of the offers I had. I had to make a decision for my family and go down to Miami and continue my career there. I was trying to pull up the quote that he had about us, but I can't really seem to find it. But that's very interesting. Obviously, Bill is not known to pay, his own, which is interesting. I mean, there's so many examples of that, and it's very. I mean, in the salary cap era, you constantly have to adapt and keep going. This next news story comes from the Palm Beach Post. Miami Dolphins humble giant Jesse Davis says he was, quote, not very good in 2017. Jesse Davis of the Miami Dolphins was quite solid when thrust into the lineup at guard or tackle last season, heavily exceeding expectations. But Davis has higher expectations for himself. In fact, on Friday, he was blunt about his 2017 performance. He said, quote, overall, this comes from the Palm Beach Post, if I didn't mention that. Overall, this is a quote from Jesse. Overall, I'd say not very good. This is about his performance. But I guess you can say I held my own. It was my first season, played multiple positions. It was fun. I know that it was kind of stressful at times, but also was just kind of fun to be in that situation where you can feel like you're going to sink, but you're starting to start treading water and really get into it. Let's see here. Because the Dolphins added former Pro Bowl guard Josh Sitton to play on the left side and Juwan James was brought back on the fifth-year option, it's been widely assumed Davis will compete with Ted Larson for the starting right guard spot. But Davis said he isn't sure what his role will be. He said, quote, oh, they haven't really told me. He said, quote, either one would be just fine for me, whatever helps the team the best. Obviously, with the moves we've already made, that have already happened, I kind of assume that I'm going to be around right guard or left guard. It depends on the situation. So that's about it. Davis has more upside than Larson, so he will be installed as the favorite as organized team activities begin on Monday. Davis said he's just ready to compete. He says, quote, I love it. Ted is a good friend of mine. It'll be fun. Get out there. It's going to be pretty fun to get out there and have competition going back again, especially with Ted, and who knows, maybe he's sitting too. We'll see what happens. So, yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because Jesse is obviously, he was a steal last season. He's I think he has potential to be a very good player. Very versatile, obviously can play tackle. I think he's a better tackle than he is a guard, just because he's not hopefully he gets more physical at the point of attack. He did give up a lot of negative plays, especially early on in the season, when he had to, get thrown into the fire because of injuries. He kind of struggled to just physically dominate the line of scrimmage in the running game, but in the passing game, he's a beautiful player. Doesn't give up anything. He's a great pass blocker. He's got great movement with he's a very good athlete. But yeah, he needs to get more physical at the point of attack. We cannot afford to have that many negative plays in the running game, get behind the chains like we did last season, and really let some of the pass rushers we play, especially in our division, get after the quarterback. Even though we were we're the 11th best pass blocking team in the league last year, we gave up very little sacks last season, and especially due to the revolving door at the quarterback position, I expect that number to go up, especially since we've improved the offensive line, in my opinion. I think Daniel Kilgore, there's not going to be that big of a fall-off for Mac Pouncey. Josh Sitton is obviously a tremendous upgrade on the interior. Keeping Juwan James and Laramie going into his second season as a left tackle, I think our offensive line is just going to be better than it was last season, and the fact that we ranked that high in pass blocking, I think is a great thing. And obviously we're getting better in the running game, and in the physicality of playing on the offensive line is just way better. Our run blocking should be way better with Daniel Kilgore and Josh sitting side by side. I think the best thing that Daniel does is just moving people in the running game. You got to remember, he played on that 49ers team that was just smash mouth, running quarterback sweeps, quarterback draws, Frank Gore, smash mouth, physical football. I think Daniel Kilgore is going to fit in amazingly and really add a physical presence that this team needs. This next news story, Miami Dolphins defensive tackle Devon Godchaux with Ndamukong Suh gone, he says, quote, "Got to pick up the game." This comes from the Palm Beach Post. Devon Godchaux has just finished saying that he can't be expected to replace Ndamukong Suh because in his eyes it's impossible for any player to match what any other player has done, what a player like that has done. But in the next breath, Godchaux couldn't help but admit, with the Dolphins releasing Suh, who later joined the Los Angeles Rams, he knows how much the team will be counting on him in 2018. Devon Godchaux no longer is just a fifth-round draft pick, a rookie with minimal expectations placed upon him. There's little chance the Dolphins would have released Suh had it not been for Godchaux's emergence. Now it's up to Godchaux to build on that, and for fellow defensive tackle Jordan Phillips and Vincent Taylor to make the Dolphins' cost-cutting move look good. Godchaux said, quote, "Most definitely, got to replace issues, got to pick it up. The game, five-time Pro Bowler, got to pick up the game. Cornerback Bobby McCain said he has confidence in the trio. He said, quote, "It's big shoes to fill, but he can get it done." Godchaux appeared in 15 games, starting 5. He finished with 40 tackles, a forced fumble, and 1 pass defense. Godchaux says, quote, "Always can be better. I think this year you're going to see a lot of improvement each and every day." If so, a big credit goes to Suh. Godchaux said he learned plenty by observing Suh's professionalism and getting his advice. Quote, he said, quote, this is from Godchaux, "Taking care of your body, I mean, that guy was just a genius at that. Eating the right things, those things help a lot, especially when you're in South Florida weather. Just preparing for film study, picking up tendencies on offensive linemen." Let's see here. Although the Dolphins didn't consummate a trade with the Rams, they in effect swapped defensive linemen, picking up Robert Quinn from L.A. Godchaux said, quote, about Robert Quinn, "A damn good pass rusher at that. I watched him with the Rams a little bit. Didn't really study his film a whole lot, but I know he's a damn good pass rusher." So there you go, guys. Devon Godchaux looking to pick up his play. I thought he had a very good rookie year. There was plays where you just were like, whoa. I think his best game was probably the Falcons game. There was just a couple, maybe I'm getting those games mixed up. But if I'm right about that, there was a play where he blew up Devontae Freeman. And you're like, well, if he can do that on a consistent basis, if he ever gets to start, I think he has a lot of great potential. And the thing that he did well coming out of college, and the thing that all the scouts were saying about him, and when you watch him play at LSU, he really gets after the quarterback well. Obviously, the reason he dropped so far in the draft, I think, was for some off-the-field issues, but obviously he was a little smaller. But we've seen Aaron Donald with the success he's had, and he's one of the smaller defensive tackles in the league. But I think Devon Godchaux is going to be... I'm very excited to see what he can do with this opportunity. I don't have high expectations for him. I don't think he's going to be this dominating Pro Bowl player. But I'm looking for him to have like a Randy Starks-esque season, like in 2012 type year, where he just kind of dominates the position that he's playing and just really gives us solid minutes. And I think that's something I think Devon's a way better pass rusher than Randy was ever. So I think we're going to see a very interesting rotation in the interior of that line, and I think Devon Godchaux will take advantage of it and take some big strides in year 2. Why Miami Dolphins running back Kenny Drake has added weight. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Kenny Drake knows he's going to have more carries this season than he's ever had as a Miami Dolphin, so he's taking action. Drake revealed Friday he added 5 to 10 pounds since the season ended. He said, quote, "So I'm about 215 right now." He said, quote, "I know as I run around, I'll probably lose that weight, but maintaining it definitely is something I want to do. Get that weight to begin with, sustain it during the off-season program. Then when training camp hits, I might lose 5 pounds, but I still will be at optimal weight for the season." Let's see here. He said, Drake said his role on Friday was to he's talking about some kind of golf tournament that he raised some charity. Moving on from that. Drake feels the added weight comes with no downside. He said, quote, "Just for the long season," Drake said, "the wear and tear that you have to go through, I feel the weight won't slow me down. He says, it will just give me the extra power and momentum that I need to kind of go throughout the entire season. I feel it's mostly being I'm mostly being conscious of the weight I put on my body, the time I put my meals in my body, to make sure that I eat 3 snacks a day with meals in between, just really being mindful of the things I put into my body. Miami's offseason program in Davie begins on Monday. Drake said, I can't wait to get started. I wish we were putting on pads. But the CBA kind of doesn't allow that, so I look forward to getting back in the groove with the team, running around with Ryan Tannehill back at the handle again. I am so excited. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, is the quote of the day. That is a definitely stop the bus moment, saying I cannot wait to run around with Ryan Tannehill, be back at the handle. I cannot wait to be running around with Ryan Tannehill, and Ryan Tannehill being back on the handle again. I am so excited. That is the quote of the day. 1 year ago, Drake was arguably Miami's third string running back. He said, quote, "It's a new season. I can't really think about that last year because last year is last year." First of all, he had a tremendous season when he got the ball. Let's not act like Kenyan wasn't a goon, because Kenyan was a beast last season. He was an absolute beast. I cannot wait to see what he does. And I've been beating that drum for years. And thank God, and you know what? Things happen. People get hurt, people get traded, things happen. Kenny Drake, got thrown into the fire, and what did he do? All he did was, make plays. I mean, the performance he had against New England was one of the best individual performances we've seen against an AFC East divisional rival, and maybe, I don't know, that's definitely the top 3 I've seen. I think that's probably second to only the 2013 season when Ryan Tannehill had the game-winning drive against the Patriots. That was probably the best that we've seen. No Sean Moreno's game against the Patriots in 2014 was really good. I think he had 156 yards. Cameron Wake had a good game that game as well. But yeah, that was one of the best AFC East divisional performances we've seen in a very long time. So I cannot wait to see what Kenyan Drake does. And obviously he dominated for the rest. He should have got more dang carries when we went up to Buffalo, because he was beating their cheeks as well. If it wasn't for some of those negative plays because of the feeling of our dang offensive line being inept at times in the running game, he would have beat the cheeks off the Bills too. So I can't wait. Frank Gore wants to show Kenny Drake a few things. This comes from Pro Football Talk. Frank Gore is back in Miami, but he's not ready to retire. The Miami native and University of Miami alum signed with the Dolphins for his 14th NFL season, and he plans to put that experience to use as more than just a ball carrier in head coaches Adam Gase's offense. Gore also sees an opportunity to impart some of what he's learned over the years to Miami's third-year back, Kenny Drake. He said, quote, "I can show him a lot of things, on and off the field, the way to be a pro. Quote, just to show," Frank also said, "just to show the way I work and the way I've lasted so long to play this game at a high level. When I watched him, he's a very quick and fast guy. I think that 1-2 punch will be very nice for this team." Drake closed strong in 2017 with 444 yards on 91 carries in the final 5 games of the season, but only had 19 carries in the first half of the year as he was stuck behind Jay Ajayi on the depth chart. Ajayi is now in Philly, which leaves Gore as the other contender to work at running back. How much of it he'll may come down to how much he's mentoring to help Drake as the team gets ready for the 2018 season. To be honest with you, he could also be mentoring another young guy. The Dolphins do need a third running back. I think eventually I hope it's Mark Walton. I mean, obviously we've had a great success with drafting University of Miami running backs. Obviously they have a long lineage down there in Miami. They've had a lot. I mean, when you talk about some of the great running backs, even over the last 5 to 8 years, we've had Lamar Miller, Mark Walton, who's coming out this year, Duke Johnson. The list goes on and on. We've had a lot of really good running backs come out of the University of Miami lately. This next news story, we already read this. Dolphins hosting Baker Mayfield. Okay, here we go. Dolphins meeting with Dallas Goedert and Hayden Hurst. This comes from Pro Football Talk. The Dolphins cut Julius Thomas and Anthony Fasano is a free agent, which means Miami is without 2 players who saw 1,000 offensive snaps between them during the 2017 season. That's led many to predict the Dolphins will be taking a tight end in the early part of the draft. Later this month, 2 of the players who could be possibilities after visiting the team on Wednesday. In-app report of NFL media reports that South Carolina's Hayden Hurst and South Dakota's State's Dallas Goedert are in Miami to meet with the team. Both players are being projected as potential selections during the first 2 days of the draft. Goedert caught 164 passes for 2,000 yards and 18 touchdowns over his final 2 collegiate seasons. Hurst wasn't quite as productive, 92 catches for just hitting 1,000 yards and 3 touchdowns, but earns good marks as a balanced tight end who can contribute as both a receiver and a blocker. Oklahoma's Mark Andrews and Penn State Mike Gesicki generally join Goedert and Hurst at the top of the rankings for tight ends. Seeing any of them wind up with the Dolphins will not come as a great surprise later this month. First of all, I just want to get this out there right now. I think Dallas Goedert, and I hope I'm not getting these guys. Okay, I get these guys mixed. Hayden Hurst is the South Carolina. Hayden Hurst, don't like him as much. I know he's a great inline blocker and all this other trash that everybody's, we're in the 1990s, everybody. We got to run the football. And I understand getting in, 11, 12 personnel, big boy football. We're going to put the rock in the paint. I understand that. You need somebody who's a great inline blocker like a Lee Smith, and there are very few left in the NFL, Jason Witten. I understand that, and I get it. I don't care. You know what's more important than that? Having an inline blocker? A tight end who can go for 150 yards in a football game. That's what's more important than that. I need a player that can dominate in the middle of the football field. I need a player who's going to score touchdowns from any part of the field, who is going to dominate the seams, and who is going to dominate in play-action football. Okay? That's what I need. If we really want to, we can sign veteran players who are great inline blockers. You know what we can do? Let's sign Anthony Fasano back. We could draft an inline blocker later. We could draft one in the 7th round if we need to. Let's just look at some tape, find a great inline blocker. That's all he does well. We'll have a package for you. And I understand deceptiveness and all this other garbage. Like, listen, we need, you want to be deceptive. You don't want to be predictable. I could care, and I'm honest, I'm serious. I could care less about an inline blocker, okay? I just want somebody who can dominate the middle of the field, dominate the red zone, who I can throw a 5-yard pass behind the line of scrimmage, break a few tackles, and run up the dang sideline. We're the only team in the NFL who doesn't have a dang tight end who can at least catch a pass. We don't have one right now. Tannehill has gone far too long in his career without having one. I am sick and tired of it. We need to draft one. I don't care if we draft one round in the 2nd round. I could care less. People are underselling how important tight ends are. If we got Mike Gesicki, I would be on cloud 9. Okay, I think he is the best receiving tight end in this draft, bar none. I think he's going to be a dominant player. Is he a good inline blocker? No, he's a terrible blocker. He's a former volleyball player, for God's sakes. He can't block anybody, let alone a 30-year-old NFL defensive lineman or a 30-year-old Navarro Bowman coming at him at full speed. No, he's not going to block him. Are you kidding me? But you know what he can do? He can outrun everybody on the field. He's taller than everybody on the field. And you know what? He can jump higher than anybody on the field. And to me, that's more important. And I think that's going to help our 3rd down conversion rate. We need a safety. We need that in our offense. And dude, it is, at this point in time, it is absolutely disrespectful to the Dolphins fans at this point that we don't at least have a tight end on this roster. It's honestly gross, and I honestly hope the Dolphins, and they probably don't, and I understand the system that we run. We do need inline blockers. I understand that, and I'm not ignorant to it. I'm just saying I value a tight end that is a dominant receiver who can eventually learn to be a half-decent inline blocker. It can dominate in the slot, and that's what I value. In my personal opinion, when I look at tight ends, especially in today's age, that's what I value, is a dominant tight end who's a great South Dakota State's Dallas Goedert. I think he's the 2nd best receiving tight end in this league. I just don't think he's as physically gifted as Mike Gesicki. I think Mike Gesicki's a fine route runner, but I think Dallas is probably more refined and more of a polished prospect when it comes to route running and stuff of that nature. I think Mike Gesicki did it. He dominated at a higher level and higher competition in football than Dallas did. So I think there's a little less bust potential there, and I think Mike is just far. I mean, the man ran a 4.3 40 time, or not a 4.3, excuse me, a 4.5 40 time. So he ran a very fast 40 time, and when you look at the tape, he still dominates. He's a great rounder. I'm just saying, if we could just get one of these guys, that would be tremendous. I'm sick and tired of not having a tight end, and that is what is going to close out today's show. I was going to throw another. We're not going to do the mock draft this week because I want to save that for, if I'm got my dang calendar right, I think there's gonna, I think we'll do it the week of the draft. That way it's a little bit more exciting. There's gonna be more rumors to talk about, more visits to talk about, to really hype up the mock draft, and we'll do it then. So that's gonna be it, guys. I am Skagster1083. I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. We went through a ton of news. The tight end position, very controversial. What do you like, guys? Down in the comment section below. Do you like your balance guys? Do you like your Jason Wintons? Or do you like your dang Jimmy Grahams and your Tony Gonzalez's and your dang Kellen Winslow, Gronk, all these dominant receiving tight ends that I value more than anything else. So I'm Skagster1083, and I will see you guys in the next one.